From NBC News, this is NBC Nightly News, reported from Washington by Brian Williams.
Good evening. An assassin has taken yet another world leader away from us. It was just after the biggest peace rally in Tel Aviv in many years. 100,000 people had come out for a Saturday evening celebration there. As Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin was getting into his car, shots were fired. He was pronounced dead after surgery to save his life failed. Yitzhak Rabin was a soldier and a tough one who became one of the great peacemakers of our time. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize and almost seized his goal of peaceful coexistence with Arabs in his lifetime before his life was cut short tonight. NBC's Martin Fletcher reports from Tel Aviv this evening, where tonight there is anger, shock, and sadness.
Security men and police caught the assassin immediately, dragging him through the crowd, a 27-year-old student of law from near Tel Aviv. Yitzhak Rabin had just finished his speech at a rally for peace. He left the stage and walked into the crowd shaking hands. Then, an eyewitness said, 4 or 5 shots rang out and Rabin collapsed into the arms of his security men. He was shot twice, once in the chest, once in the back.
He came down, he walked towards the car. All of a sudden there were like 4 shots, 5 shots, something like that. And then he like collapsed. I saw him collapsing.
Rabin was rushed to the hospital but was quickly pronounced dead. Earlier, Yitzhak Rabin had told an enthusiastic crowd of supporters of the peace process that after 27 years as a soldier, he had decided to give peace a chance. I always believe that most of the people want peace, Rabin said. He continued, violence is eating away at Israeli democracy and it must be condemned and stopped. This is not the way of the Israeli state, he said. This is a democracy. Minutes later, Rabin was dead, shocking Israelis. Crowds formed at the hospital, Israelis refusing to believe a Jew could kill the Prime Minister. But the alleged killer, Yigal Amir, told interrogators he did not regret the killing, that he acted in cold blood and that he acted alone. A right-wing Jewish group claimed he acted for all right-wingers, who have said they'll force a civil war if that's what it takes to stop the government giving up the West Bank and Gaza Strip to the Palestinians. Yasser Arafat, who last year shared the Nobel Peace Prize with Rabin, reacted quickly.
Very sad and very shocked for this awful and terrible crime against one of the brave leaders of Israel and the peacemakers.
But right-wing Israelis have threatened, warned and attacked Rabin, telling him to stop the peace process or else. Rabin said he would not listen to extremists, only the voice of the people as expressed in democratic elections. In the Middle East, they say only the strong make peace, and Yitzhak Rabin, however uncomfortable he looked when he took the hand of his former arch-enemy, was a man of strength, a soldier turned politician. As chief of staff, Rabin led Israel's armed forces in their lightning victory against Egypt, Syria and Jordan in 6 days in 1967. The land they conquered became known as the occupied territories, the Golan Heights, the West Bank, the Gaza Strip. And as Prime Minister, Rabin led the breakthrough in peace talks with the Arabs, first with the Palestinians, then with King Hussein of Jordan.
I see in this commitment on the part of the PLO a change, a dramatic change, that opens the road towards reconciliation and peace.
Israelis mourning outside the hospital asked, now what? Rabin's security men had warned him for months to take extra security precautions, but he refused, saying he didn't want yet more protection. Martin Fletcher, NBC News, Tel Aviv.
We want to go now to NBC's John Palmer at the White House tonight, where tonight the president came out and reacted with deep emotion to this assassination. John?
Yes, indeed, he did, Brian. The president was in the family quarters of the executive mansion just behind me shortly after 3 o'clock this afternoon when his national security advisor, Tony Lake, walked in and said Prime Minister Rabin had died of his wounds. The president was described as deeply saddened and upset. He went immediately to the Oval Office, drafted some remarks, and then a short time after that went into the Rose Garden and had this to say.
The world has lost one of its greatest men, a warrior for his nation's freedom, and now a martyr for his nation's peace. For half a century, Yitzhak Rabin risk his life to defend his country. Today, he gave his life to bring it a lasting peace. His last act, his last words were in defense of that peace he did so much to create. Peace must be, and peace will be, Prime Minister Rabin's lasting legacy. Yitzhak Rabin was my partner and my friend. I admired him, and I loved him very much. Because words cannot express my true feelings, let me just say, Shalom, Haver. Goodbye, friend.
Prime Minister Rabin was last at the White House on September 28th, along with PLO leader Yasser Arafat, Egyptian President Mubarak, and Jordan's King Hussein, for the signing of an agreement extending PLO sovereignty on the West Bank. President Clinton and Rabin met again briefly on October 25th in Washington at a State Department dinner. The president has issued a proclamation ordering all flags on United States buildings and installations to be flown at half-staff as a measure of respect for Rabin. The flag atop the White House was lowered a short time ago. And the White House has announced that the president will leave tomorrow, canceling a previous trip that he had planned to New York and Detroit on Monday. He will cancel that. Tomorrow he will leave for Israel to attend the state funeral for Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin on Monday. Brian?
NBC's John Palmer at the White House for us tonight. We thank you. We are also joined here in Washington this evening by Richard Haass, formerly of the National Security Council and an NBC News consultant. Richard, the natural question that comes out of all this is, where does this all leave the peace process?
Brian, clearly it's a setback no matter how you measure it. At a minimum, you're going to have all the disruption of coming up with a new leader, letting him get into place. You've also got new elections scheduled for no more than a year from now. But more important than anything than that, Yitzhak Rabin was unique in Israeli politics. He not only wanted to negotiate peace, he was strong enough to negotiate peace. Israelis felt comfortable with him like perhaps they would with no other leader. And it remains to be seen whether there is any other Israeli who can fill that unique niche, that's someone who wants to negotiate and is also strong enough to.
What about Israeli society after this and the two camps?
It's awfully worrying. What we now see is a split in Israel. It's not simply that people are almost evenly divided about what to do about Syria or what to do about the Palestinians. It's the degree of bitterness. It's the degree of ideology. It's the willingness to use force. You have people talking about disobeying military orders. Clearly, Israel has come to something of a turning point in its history, and one has got to say that the events of the last few hours do not make one terribly optimistic about the coming weeks and months.
Richard Haass, we want to thank you for joining us tonight. We'll, of course, have more coverage of the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin later on in this broadcast. When NBC Nightly News continues in a moment, U.S. presidential politics, the Colin Powell watch continues. And later, the media literacy movement in this country, teaching children how to watch television. Now to the political scene in this country, and a decision that may amount to a sea change in the race for president in '96. Colin Powell was supposed to complete his decision-making process this weekend. There is still no announcement, and as NBC's Rick Davis reports, others who would be president are out there hitting the trail hard.
It was the stuff of politics in Bangor, Maine. 2,000 Republicans greeted 7 of the presidential hopefuls, each trying to convince these voters he should be the party's choice.
This is the turning point in my campaign if I'm to be successful.
Presidential hopefuls not here are not forgotten. For a $15 contribution, these Maine Republicans can state whom they think should have the job. Some folks are backing a man who has not yet said he wants the job and isn't here, Colin Powell.
Of all the candidates, he's the one that definitely can and will win.
At the Powell house, the question remains, will he or won't he? Today, the man with that answer stayed behind closed doors. But for weeks, Powell has consulted movers and shakers, past and present, in the Republican Party, including his old White House boss, former President George Bush. He reportedly told friends Powell would make a good president. Powell and Jimmy Carter worked together to bring a peace settlement in Haiti. The possible Republican candidate consulted the former Democratic president in the last week. But Ross Perot says if Powell gets in the race, He will face attacks from conservative Republicans and Democrats.
When the dirty tricks boys get through with him in 60 days, you won't recognize him and you'll be mad at him.
Perot called that a tragic way to select people for public life. But how does a Powell possibility play in Maine?
I wish that if he were going to be a candidate, though, he'd declare himself. You know, people that sit back and don't get into the race, don't make a commitment, don't excite a lot of people.
But Republicans in Maine and across the nation will have to wait until later this month when his aides say Colin Powell will say yes or no to a presidential run. Rick Davis, NBC News.
And America's Roman Catholic Church issued its traditional pre-presidential election year manifesto today. It spoke of issues, but not personalities. Details from NBC's Bob Abernathy.
Exactly 1 year before the 96 elections, the U.S. Catholic bishops tonight issued a 32-page booklet summarizing Catholic social teachings and urging Catholics as individuals to act on those values in politics. The test of the 1996 elections, say the bishops, will be how our choices touch the weak and vulnerable. The bishop's statement is being mailed to each of the country's 19,000 Catholic parishes. While it encourages Catholics to be active citizens, it specifically opposes Catholics becoming a voting bloc or the churches doing anything partisan. The bishops also seem to imply significant differences between them and Pat Robertson's Christian Coalition. The bishops don't mention the coalition by name, but a spokesman makes it clear the bishops think their teachings are more compassionate and consistent than the coalition's.
We share concerns with them on the unborn, on family life and other issues. But it's not so much what they work on as what we work on that they may not work on. We say to some of our friends who are with us on abortion, what about children after they're born? What will welfare reform mean for those kids?
A spokeswoman said the Christian Coalition agrees 100% with the bishop's concerns.
We all want to address those needs. We have the same goals. It's just a matter of how do you reach those goals.
Although the 60 million American Catholics are a diverse group, the bishops hope they will all be influenced by tonight's message. Concern for the weak, the poor, and the common good. Bob Abernathy, NBC News, Washington.
Presidential politics and the budget battle will be key topics tomorrow on NBC's Meet the Press. Republican Senate Leader Bob Dole and Democratic Senator Edward Kennedy will be Tim Russert's guests. When NBC Nightly News continues raising the media IQ of America's children. In focus this evening, teaching children how to watch TV. A media literacy movement is mobilizing in this country to neutralize media's negative messages. NBC's Kelly O'Donnell has our report.
The statistics are stunning. Today's children will spend 10 full years of their lives watching television. By age 18, they will have seen 350,000 commercials. The nonstop flow of images can color much of a child's view of the world, even shaping values. Some believe the influence is so powerful that kids need to be taught to protect themselves.
Let's look at advertisement for this product.
Last year, New Mexico was the first state in the country to require that all students study media literacy. That means they learn to analyze the visuals and messages in things they see and read every day.
I think that more and more people are beginning to realize that the culture that their children are surrounded by in those very young years has a great deal to do with the kind of citizen that comes out of that culture.
That citizen is also a consumer, so much of media literacy focuses on helping students understand the persuasion behind commercials.
It's sort of like you sort of come to life when you drink this beer.
Advocates say media literacy training is essential.
The children are a real target market. So it's going to be very, very important to ensure that children are given the tools to respond.
One of those tools is this soft drink experiment in an Albuquerque first grade class. The test, do kids choose a favorite drink on the appeal of its taste or the appeal of its brand name?
I knew it was B was Coca-Cola because it tasted like Coca-Cola.
But B was RC.
Yeah.
4 out of 10 students could not match the favorite they named with the favorite they tasted.
Even when they're this young, they can learn a lot. They can learn a lot about visual imagery
and how it affects them.
An even bigger concern is the effect of sex and violence on TV. That's more difficult to measure, but some researchers worry that excessive exposure to violence and mature messages can be harmful to a child's mental health.
It can lead to more aggressive behavior. It can make children more fearful.
New Mexico's mandatory program costs about $100,000 a year. Voluntary workshops and elective courses like this one in suburban Los Angeles are available in more than a dozen other states.
One goal of media literacy is to influence the industry, not through censorship or boycotts, but by making students more critical and more careful about what they watch and read. Believing a demand for quality will create a better supply.
If there's one thing that I learned, and probably the most important thing, is that everything we see on television has been contrived and planned for months and months, and that basically everything we see is a business.
A business with lots of channels and choices. Media literacy, as the movement expands, will change the way viewers stay tuned. Kelly O'Donnell, NBC News, Albuquerque.
When NBC Nightly News continues from Washington, a typhoon called Angela and her death toll in Asia. Now to the violent weather season in Asia. The latest Pacific storm has killed at least 250 people. Typhoon Angela devastated the southern Philippines and is now over the South China Sea, headed for Vietnam. NBC's Keith Miller reports.
The death toll is almost certain to rise because many remote villages and towns are still cut off. Typhoon Angela knocked out power to a third of the country, and with communication lines down, coordinating rescue and relief crews is proving difficult. In many places, major bridges have been washed away and roads cut as the storm swept over the southern part of the Philippines. Today, some people left shelters, only to find their homes had been flattened by the storm. An estimated 300,000 people have been left homeless. At the height of the typhoon, winds topped 125 miles an hour, but it was water that caused the most damage, cascading down mountainsides and creating waves of mud 7 feet high. Officials estimate that damage to homes, factories, and crops will exceed $70 million. The Philippines is hit by an average of 20 tropical storms a year, but Typhoon Angela carried a punch not seen in more than a decade of violent storms. Keith Miller, NBC News.
Now to the families of the victims of Pan Am Flight 103. Those families who stayed away from yesterday's official ceremonies at Arlington National Cemetery held their own commemoration today. They boycotted yesterday's unveiling because they feel Washington has not done enough to gain the extradition of 2 Libyans accused in the bombing that killed 270 people, including 189 Americans. When NBC Nightly News continues in a moment, more on the murder today of Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. Once again, our top story this evening, the assassination of Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, gunned down at a pro-government rally tonight in Tel Aviv. The 73-year-old Rabin was rushed to a hospital where he died of his wounds a short time later. A young Israeli student linked to a right-wing Israeli extremist group was arrested at the scene. Late tonight, there was a prayer service among members of the Israeli cabinet. They gathered following the tragic news of the death of the prime minister. They were led in prayer by Shimon Peres, who has been named acting prime minister. And Peres had this reaction to the death of Mr. Rabin.
Day for the Jewish people, for the state of Israel, for our neighbors, for the peace process all over the world. Yitzhak Rabin was an exceptional person and an exceptional leader. We never had anybody like him, and I'm afraid we shall not have anybody to succeed him completely in the future. It was a happy day in his life, probably the happiest day in his life. We spent the whole evening together. Never did I see him more happy, more excited, more complete with himself.
Israeli radio is reporting tonight the assassin reportedly told police he was acting, quote, on God's orders alone and does not regret what he did. The White House says President Clinton will leave Sunday for Israel, where the prime minister will be buried in accordance with Jewish tradition on Monday afternoon. The president and other world leaders, including PLO chairman Yasser Arafat, have expressed their shock and sadness, their hope that the Middle East peace process will continue. The president tonight remembered Rabin's visit to the White House just a month ago and the words he used then about the need for reconciliation between old enemies. That is Nightly News for this Saturday. I'm Brian Williams in Washington. Good night.
NBC News, now more than ever.